pleasure to be here. Thanks a lot, Mahmoud, for inviting us. How many of you have heard about the Internet of Things? Pretty many people, yeah. It's a very common subject. And how have you thought about what's happening after the Internet of Things have been sort of growing to a tremendous number of devices, software, agents, CPU in all these internet devices that we have in our homes and all over? Any thoughts about that? Security problems. Good one. So what kind of security problems have you thought about? All kinds, yeah. Yeah. And why is that? I mean, why do we get security problems? Just because we have a lot of CPU and software out there in all kinds of devices.
Because we simply multiply existing security.
That is true. Very, very good. And any other sort of thoughts around this?
Open idea.
Yeah, it's open. I mean, the internet was built for being open, so it continues. And open can be sometimes a problem too. But it's very good that it's open, of course. That's very nice. I mean, we wish that we didn't have to think about security, right? I mean, I wish that I was living in a home where I could just leave all the doors open and have no password or anything to my devices. But unfortunately, that doesn't work today, at least. But anyway, I'm going to talk a little bit about Internet of Things and a little bit about the cyber threats around this. A little bit about the landscape today that we see from Arbor networks. Of course, a little bit about who we are and where we come from and what we can do and what we do for our customers today. I'm also going to talk a little bit about a report that we give out, which actually is for free, but it's a very good report of about what's going on in Internet and what we see in Internet from a security perspective. And we have a lot of intelligence there from our systems. So, to start with, Internet of Things. I mean, this is becoming the reality for more and more people in the world right now. We have all these devices, all these things with a lot of CPU power. And adding to this, we also have very high bandwidth to the homes today. I mean, I live in the suburban parts of Stockholm, and we have had like 25 gigabit per second. And now we're getting, megabit per second. And now we are getting 1,000 megabit per second, even to a small house. And if you think about it, many organizations and companies rarely have over 10 gigabit per second in bandwidth to their data centers. It's very unusual that somebody has more than 10 today. But to the home, we suddenly have like a very, very big bandwidth. And with all these devices in the home and all the bandwidth that we have from the homes, that is a tremendous power out there that somebody, of course, will try to take control over. It could be a government, it could be a criminal organization. I don't want to put this in the same category, of course, but sometimes you start to wonder. And you could definitely see it as a huge, huge risk here. 26 billion devices is what Gartner say or predict that we will have in about 5 years from now, actively working on Internet. This is a low estimation. Companies like Cisco have estimated 50 billion, not 26, almost twice as much, and many other companies as well. So whatever it is, a lot of devices. And in this number, there are no laptops, no computers, no mobile phones, nothing of that category included. If you add those, you have another 7 to 8 billion devices. So this is huge. And the thing is, these devices will, of course, be potential botnets. Devices that somebody can take control over and command to do things. And what can they do with them? Well, anyone who saw this movie back in the ages? What is the movie, by the way?
Skynet? Is it Skynet? Or?
No, it's not Skynet, actually.
Enemy of the state.
Huh?
Enemy of the state.
No, it's not Enemy of the State either. It is a movie about war games. It was, back in the 80s, a prediction of the future where a guy hacked into the defense system of the United States and started to play games with the computer that was controlling all the nuclear rockets. Scary future, of course. But why we have this is because when we look at the DDoS attacks today in the world, this is how it looks like. If you see different DDoS attacks coming from different places in the world, this is exactly the way it looks. We don't know where they come from, all of them, of course. So what is a DDoS attack? Well, when you fill up something with a lot of traffic, you fill up the pipe, the last mile to your data center or to your computer with lots of traffic, and nothing works. Nobody gets information, nobody can work, nobody can communicate, and so on and so forth. This is the way it works in my home, in Sweden. We have these kind of DDoS attacks to our recycling systems sometimes, when people are not so nice and they just chuck the stuff here so nobody else can go and put their cartons and bottles and metal or whatever they need to put in these. It's not so nice every time. But DDoS attacks can really be a big problem for all organizations. I mean, they really target your services and they take them down. And they can be short and they can be long. And they can be very, very advanced today. Going back to this movie, War Games again, we have done together with Google a visibility of the existing DDoS attacks right now. This is a very interesting map, actually. If you Google it, you can see it on digitalattackmap.com. And there you can actually also, you can see the existing DDoS attacks that's going on, the different types of attacks that's happening. They are described here. But you also can follow the news and the correlation to the political landscape and the happening, the breaches and the internet threats that has been written about in different medias at the same time as the attack is. You can also go back and forth in time. So you can look 1 year from now, for example, a certain date, a certain hour, what happened in my country. You can zoom in here to different countries. And yeah, it's a very interesting, this is just a short video about it, how it looks like. But this gives you a picture of about 1% of the DDoS attacks that are present at a given moment. It gives you a lot of details around it. What they use to produce this is the data that we have. And how come we have all this data? Well, we have been working in DDoS for many years, and most of the big service providers and big cloud providers and all the big networks in the world are using Arbor equipment to protect themselves against DDoS. All kinds of DDoS, not only volumetric DDoS, but also advanced threats on application layer. And to be able to protect, we need to have visibility. If we don't know what's out there, if we don't know the botnets, we can't protect ourselves. We can't protect our customers. And the customer can't protect their customer, which could be your university, for example, or another organization in your country. So all these large service providers, they are providing us with anonymized traffic data so that we get visibility of all the internet, well, not all the internet, but 50% approximately of all internet traffic. 120 terabit per second is the visibility we get today, which is a fantastic global intelligence source. And that is used in to produce this map. And we call it Atlas, Active Threat Level Analysis System. So what is the landscape today? Well, nobody really wants to talk about this, but the landscape today is that we are sort of at war. Countries don't admit this, but most countries are defending and attacking other countries, depending on the political situation. Sounds a little bit scary, but since internet is so important for us and for our infrastructure, and you can take it down without hurting any person, well, physically at least, it's very, very highly used. And it's of course a huge problem because it costs a lot of money and causes a lot of stress and so on and so forth. Weapons have been replaced. So tanks, that's volumetric attacks, you can say. Snipers, that's application attacks. Landmines, malware, spying, data loss, etc., etc. The biggest attack, well, actually this is just one of the big attacks, but one of the biggest attacks have been over 300 gigabit per second. And those are not common, but they are getting more frequent. About a few years ago, the biggest attack was 20 gigabit per second. Now that is an attack that is happening every week in most countries in the world, which is something to think about. So how long will it take until we see the first terabit attack? Most service providers and cloud providers in the world don't have capacity to resist a terabit attack. I should say almost nobody can do it. Which is a little bit scary for us, right? Because all we do on internet, all the information sharing we have, all the learning, all the e-learning, all the services, all the 24/7 services can be taken down. Very, very easily, actually, because of all these botnets that is out there. And all these vendors now producing Internet of Things, how much security knowledge do they have? To build the software, to design the software, to design the Internet of Thing that they implement in your fridge or your whatever device you use at home. It could be the door, for example. It could be the controller for the heating in the house. Well, probably we know actually from research that most of the vendors, they don't think about security. They don't know. They don't have the skills. It's too expensive to hire people to do that. And time to market is so important for these guys that timing is a very, very big issue. And security always comes late. So, 2008, the biggest attack was 8 gigabit per second. I mean, that's 10 years ago. Last year, it was 400. We don't know what it will be this year, of course. Maybe it could be less, but of course it could be more. But the interesting thing is that this is a very usual, very small attack today. And you can more or less generate an attack of this size with your smartphone today. One person's smartphone can easily take advantage of a few botnets or use an amplification with DNS or SNMP or something to get a lot of computers to respond back to one site they want to attack. Which means that a kid in school who is 10 years old, more or less, could do an attack of 8 gigabit pretty easily with the tools available today. And there are kids with this skill set today, for sure. So here is another visualization of this. Arbor started here back in 2000 and has been working all this way to protect service providers and enterprises and governments from DDoS attacks. So it's not only about volume and size and lots of packets. It's also about application attacks. Those attacks are much more difficult to see. Many customers, they don't know that they have had application attacks because they don't see it immediately. Those are very stealthy attacks, and they happen on the application layer in an OSI stack. And if you can't see them, how can you defend yourself against them? How can you protect and make sure you have your services available? Well, that is a challenge, of course. So what organizations today need is a kind of a multi-layer defense. I used to think about the Second World War when the French people built this Maginot line against the Germans, right? Well, that was one defense line. It didn't work very well because it was easy to get around it. It's the same in IT. You have to have several layers of defense. You can't trust just one perimeter, sorry. That's not good enough. And it's probably the same in your homes. You can't trust just to lock your door and hope to be safe in-house or have everything protected. You probably need something else. Maybe a video camera, maybe a burglar alarm or something, or maybe a dog. That could be the best protection, perhaps. And small in this case, that the attack is small, doesn't mean that it is something you don't have to consider. It's really a difficult and dangerous attack. So, the new breed of attacks goes from the volumetric side, the tanks and the lots of packets where we fill up the pipes, the last mile, to application, to multivector. When you do attacks on different, you can do both a volumetric and an application attack at the same time, for example. They use botnets, and they are many times, if they are big, they are a part of a large campaign. I mean, people plan, they have strategies, they have tools, they have knowledge, and they plan how to do this. And of course, in the end, something is stolen. It could for a retail, it could be credit cards for their customers. For a government, it could be many sensitive documents or information, or it could be reputation. For, well, we don't have to go over that, but it could be many things, of course. So, the attacks are coming. They are hitting your bank. In Norway, we had an attack by a 17-year-old student who actually attacked 10 different organizations at the same time. One of them was one of the biggest banks in Norway. So this was really considered to be something we thought was a bigger group of people, but eventually it turned out it was only one guy, a young guy who was trying something. But many banks, of course, have had these types of problems. It could be retailers. We all have read about all the retailers that have had big problems, like the American big ones, Home Depot and Target and so on and so forth. They lose so much money in this that it's unbelievable. Gaming, of course. One thing that the EU is doing is, of course, to establish groups that are protecting against this. And they talk to us, among other companies, but we were one of the few chosen to talk about protecting Europe against large-scale cyber attacks. Because those will come. And we see in the political landscape that when a country has a conflict with another country, one of the ways they handle the conflict today is really by doing cyberwar, DDoS attacks, application layer attacks, etc., etc. And you have to have protection against it, because sooner or later it will happen. It's difficult to say when, but the only thing we can be sure of is that it will happen, unfortunately. A little bit about Arbor. Well, we started 2000, been working with DDoS and advanced threats over the last 15 years. Have both cloud services and appliances. We have about 90% of the large service providers as customers in the world, 60% of the overall enterprises. We are in more than 100 countries, and the important thing that we can put together is that we can filter and see security information from a large stream of traffic, 120 terabit per second, which is difficult to say if it's 30 or 50% of the internet capacity, but it's something in that scale. One thing we do is that we produce a worldwide infrastructure security report once a year. That is something you can download from our website under resources. And this report shows a little bit about who is targeted in these kind of advanced DDoS attacks. And we saw last year that 53% were end users, subscribers, 35% e-commerce, and 34% were actually governments, which is interesting. We saw that 37% were vandalism or nihilism. Online gaming were 36%, but 34% were political disputes. And today, many young people or old people in many countries are actually letting their computer voluntarily become a botnet that somebody else can control for DDoS attacks, which is an interesting thing. It's a way to put resources available for some kind of DDoS attack that can be used for political reasons or protest against something. I'm sorry, this one seems to be moving without me. Sorry for that. What usually are the primarily targets to get through the door is to take down the firewall, take down the intrusion detection systems, the application firewalls, etc. And these guys are really easy to take down usually with a DDoS attack, because to be able to work as a firewall, you need to hold something that we call state. They are stateful devices. They have to have a connection and set up a new connection. And they have to have connection tables. It's very easy today to fill up these state tables, these connection tables. And when they are full, the firewall doesn't work anymore. What happens then is that people have to run and turn off certain things in the firewall, which means you're opening up your network environment and your services to other attacks, which is a big issue. So what is the business impact? Well, a lot of expense on the operational side, revenue loss, customer who is leaving you as a company. Employees even are leaving, not so common, but these are the most costly things, operational and revenue and customers. We see that on the application layer attacks, most of them goes on the normal web traffic, HTTP traffic. And then a lot on the DNS, the domain name servers, because those are very vulnerable today. And then we have on the SSL traffic, the encrypted traffic, of course, that's increasing. Still, about 60% of the attacks are volumetric, where you fill up a lot of traffic so nothing works. But these other two here, the stealthy application layer attack is 24%, and state exhaustion, where you take down firewalls very easily, for example, is about 20%. So we have a mixture here. And many times an attacker is trying one thing. If it doesn't work, he tries with something else, or he moves on to another site, to another part of the network, for example. So, another thing that is a big issue today that I'm not going to talk much about, but that is really to find out what has happened. I mean, we have a vulnerability in our software, for example, that Microsoft or Oracle or whatever vendor is announcing today. How can you know if you have been attacked on that vulnerability 3 months from now, when most likely the hacker community knew about it, but you didn't know about it? That is a very, very interesting area that we can't cover now. But if you're interested in this and how to do it, please talk to me about it. And last, you get what you pay for. I kind of like this picture. I used to show it to my kids every time they are thinking about doing a tattoo, and they do it, unless I do. I can't get away with it, but I wouldn't like to be this guy. Okay, thank you very much. Thanks for your time.
Nice.
Thank you.
Please, question. I would like to know Ilmar's comment, because you want that all EU citizens have access to data. Did you think about security? Because of that, we invite Mike here.
No, it's the open question.
It's an open question.
Because there are the privacy issues and so on. But I think this is really, you said this is vandalism and such things, and people can have access to data, but this is not about access to data. This is just making problems to normal users.
DDoS is really something that can be many reasons for. And it's really difficult sometimes to say, was this done because of vandalism, or was that just what they wanted us to think?
Yeah, it's difficult to say, so
Yeah.
I don't want to comment. But open data for research, it's important, because we need access to data which are provided by other researchers.
Yes.
And of course, these threats are equally important.
Yeah, these DDoS attacks will definitely be something to take into the calculation, because if they are growing as they are now, it will be difficult to share data and research between different universities, because if you can't make sure the services and the databases are available, then you don't have any openness anymore.
You never have all good things, not having bad things equal. It's yang and yin.
Yeah, that's true.
And you are getting more data, and at the same time, it is more vulnerable.
Yeah.
So,
Thank you.
Yeah, you get more computers and you get more problems. And more good things, of course. Yeah. We had more questions.
Yeah, it was an interesting graph with these targets, DDoS targets, but I'm wondering what is the point targeting end user? I can imagine only one situation, it's maybe online gaming, when one gamer wants to stop playing other gamer. So, but maybe there are other reasons why end users are attacked by DDoS.
Yeah, and end users can be many things, of course. I mean, an end user for a service provider can be myself or you, for example, with our mobile phones or our home computers. But it can also, of course, be the enterprise that is a customer of the service provider. And so end user is a very, it's not homogeneous, it's really different types of end users. And what we have seen in Nordics over the last year is also that many times somebody has taken control over the end users, or tried to take control over the end users' computers or mobile phones, to use them to attack the service provider from the inside, which is a very smart thing, because many service providers didn't have protection for the DNS infrastructure, for example, on the inside. So they could take down the services completely for many big service providers, because they were only protected from the outside, sort of. So maybe that is one of the reasons. But there are many strategies around this, or coincidences.
I have a question. You use a very good can you follow who, the data stream coming out of the attack, or who is doing the attack?
Yes, the Atlas system that we have with all these 320 service providers that give us anonymized traffic data. So we see all this 120 terabit per second all the time. That gives us a fantastic amount of data to really understand how are these botnets connected and how are they used, and what is the sort of the correlation between a botnet over here and one here and what's happening in the political landscape here. So we do a lot of analysis around this. We have a team of more than 30 people working around the clock to do these kind of analysis, and also to provide protection countermeasures and fingerprints against these types of attacks. But it's not only to see that, yes, we got an attack, we could take care of it, but we don't know anything more about it. That's not good enough. You need to understand, just as you are saying here, how is this, why is this coming, and how is it used, and what part of the world is using this, and what kind of command and control servers have been involved in this, and so on and so forth. Because then you get the intelligence of really protecting yourself against a future attack in a much better way. So yes, it's a very valid point.
Helena, please.
It was a very interesting statistics, this chart or graph about motivation, attacks motivation. It was some questionnaire or survey or hackers or this information.
Yeah, we give out, let's see here. We give out this report, Worldwide Infrastructure Security Report, and that is done both with our statistics that we get, but also with interviews with large organizations, governments, large banks, and so on and so forth, big networking providers, about what they see as different scenarios and problems. And we produce this once a year as a summary of what we have seen over the year. And we usually release that report in February. So the last report is still pretty fresh, to say. And if you're interested in reading it, you can, I'm not sure if you see it here, but if you go to arbornetworks.com, you can click on something called resources. That's one of the tabs. And there you find this Worldwide Infrastructure Security Report. You can download it for free. You just have to give your email, of course, like always. Yeah, but it's a great report, actually. It's really a lot of data there. And I mean, knowledge that could be useful when you're planning what you need to do. I hope that answered your question. But okay.
Yeah, more question.
The size of the volumetric attacks, is that growing faster or slower than the growth of the internet?
That is a good question. Well, I think it's right now, over the last 3 years, it has been growing faster because we see. Yeah, there we are. You see here. I mean, here it was, of course, not growing faster because internet had a tremendous growth there. But from here, I don't think internet has grown this much over the last 3 years. So here we see a big difference. But here they started to use the amplification attacks where they could tell, for example, a DNS server, an open resolver that was not protected on internet. And there are lots of those. So one guy could tell a lot of DNS servers to send traffic to this site. And then he got a tremendous attack. So he sent a small packet stream up there, and then it was amplified to a tremendous. That's where we saw these 400 gigabits per second, for example, was that type. But you have many of those systems on the internet since it was built to be open, of course. I mean, you have SNMP, you have DNS, you have Chargen, and so on and so forth. So there are many, many systems that can be used for this that still are very open. And that can, of course, become a problem for the organization that is having this DNS that is open, because they can be on the blacklist very easily. And similar to antivirus and spam and so on, I mean, you don't want to be on the blacklist because suddenly you can't communicate with anybody. So that is very important to take care of course.
What I was wondering is, of course, you cannot really extrapolate, but there could be a point in time when one single attack could seriously shut down, say, a part of the internet completely.
Yes, a country, definitely. Definitely. Because how much capacity do the service providers really have from sort of the gateway borders? Usually not 400 gigabit. I mean, if it's a huge country, of course they can have more, but that's really a big problem even for a big country, these types of attacks. And we have a cloud service that can protect against this, but that cloud service today, it scales up to 1.2 terabit per second. But if there should be several attacks in the world, even that won't be enough. So we are upgrading that now to almost 2 terabit per second in the end of the year. But you never know. I mean, you don't want to do it too early and you don't want to be late. So it's a difficult challenge.
Professor, you had a question. Boris.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
My question is not usual. In any situation with a potential risk, we have several options. First, we may do something to prevent. Then, of course, we can monitor the situation. Yeah? And then do something as reaction. So every activity asks money, investment.
Yes.
So what is your opinion for usual end user? Is it reasonable, economical, to monitor these activities, to try to analyze, to plan and do something in advance to prevent a situation, or simply to sit and wait, and after DDoS attack happens, do something what he could or what he can prepare in advance? And where is this level when it is better to perform this passive strategy, yeah, or prevent effective? Would you recommend something?
I can say that, well, of course, a recommendation usually takes much more research and analysis than we have time for now. But in general terms, I should say that many times these types of attacks, which are pretty advanced, are used as one part of the campaign against an organization. So the DDoS comes in, causes a lot of distraction for all the operational IT staff. Lots of stress. I mean, nobody has availability to their information. Nobody can work. And they see that the firewall goes down, for example. They take it up, but it was years since they actually took down and up the firewall in a fast way, because that is a scary thing to do, because if it doesn't work, nobody can work. So if it doesn't work partially, they turn off the IDS, the intrusion detection or prevention system in the firewall, just to make it work. So at least they get some kind of service up there for the community or for the customers. And that's usually exactly what the attacker wants, because then he gets a way to get through and to start to explore the network and all the data in the network, and to get root access to many things. And then he can stay in the network for many months before he do anything. So I think that in general, you have to make sure that your applications in the data centers are protected in the way that even if the last mile, the internet connection, is filled with volumetric traffic, you should be able to stop it before your firewalls, before it's hitting your applications and services. You will then have, of course, outage of the availability for a certain time, but at least it will not make everything fall down in your security system and cause that kind of stress that people do mistakes and open backdoors. Then, when you have that in place, then you can, and that could be one box for a data center. It doesn't have to be several boxes, very expensive or so. Then you can, on top of that, add a cloud service to protect the last mile also for the volumetric attacks. And then those cloud services can be bought for, well, in many ways. It could be one mitigation per year, for example, just to take care of the first big attack. And then you can decide what to do next. Or it could be 5 or 10 or 12 or whatever. But then you can also connect the cloud service with this box that you have in your data center in front of everything else. So that when the appliance in the data center start to see, hey, we have a DDoS attack here, the pipe is filling up. It starts to signal up to the cloud and tell, hey, we need help. And then the cloud, whatever provider that is, can call your people and ask, hey, shall we start to clean the traffic here for your internet connection? And that is, of course, the best way to do it, to have all these. But I think you need to start somewhere. And if you have this box in front of your firewalls in the data center, you will have good protection for layer 7 attacks, because those are best handled in that point. And you will at least have protection for all the applications and security devices you have in your data center. So I think that's where you should start. And then you add on a cloud service. But for another customer, it could be he has a lot of volumetric problems. Then he probably starts from the other side with the cloud service. So it depends.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Nice.
Thank you very much.